Hello Thrivers, welcome back. So today I was answering a question from someone who sent me an email saying that they were raised as a scapegoat and they're now an adult child of a narcissistic parent, but they can't seem to stop craving and chasing after the acceptance and love that was denied to them by their narcissistic parent. Okay, and this is a good question. And a lot of people have gone through this. I was in it myself. And we can stay stuck chasing after something that somebody is like, I think of like a bully, right? They're like holding your head and they're holding what you want and you're trying to grab it and you just can't reach it. That's kind of what happens with love and acceptance from a narcissistic parent to a scapegoated child. So the problem with that, right? A lot of people might say, oh, just forget it. Just go no contact, super easy. Well, it's really not. It's not easy. So in this video, I want to talk about why it's not easy, because I feel like when we can understand it, then we feel less crazy, right? Because we can feel that way, because it doesn't make sense. So we'll understand the why, and then we'll learn how to break that cycle, that craving. So with that in mind, let's get started. For those that don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm a life and relationship coach, and I'm also the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live weekly. And we talk about all of this together. So if that's something you might be interested in, make sure you check out the links in the description box below. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is why. Why is it so hard to let go of chasing after something that on a logical level, you know you can't get? Like, you know this person is purposely holding their love and acceptance just outside of your reach. They might let your fingertips touch it every now and then, right? And you think you have it, and then they pull it away. And there's this push and pull all the time. On a logical level, we might know that it's a lost cause to keep chasing it, right? And yet it's almost like there's something within that compels you to do so, to continue the chase. First of all, if anyone feels that way, I just want to let you know that that's normal. The fact that you expected, wanted, and needed love and acceptance from your parent shows that you are a normal human with a heart, right? Every child needs that. Not just wants it, but every child needs it as well. So not only is it normal to expect and want and need that, but on top of that, parents are expected to give that, like, without thought, right? Parents are expected to be able to love their child unconditionally, to be able to love them not because of what they do, but because of who they are. Children deserve that. That's their birthright, right? And the reality is that that kind of love, that kind of unconditional love, isn't something impossible. It's not like we're chasing a unicorn, right? Because we see awesome parents all the time. We see parents loving their kids unconditionally. We see parents showing up for their kids, having their back, being there for them. So what we're craving, we know exists. We know it's real. We see people that have it. On top of that, in the School of Transformation, I talk a lot about being able to self-validate and being able to show up for yourself. But the truth is that no child should have to self-validate, and no child should have to emotionally support themselves. They don't have the emotional intelligence or the emotional maturity to be able to do that in childhood. So they need their parents' love and acceptance. It's not optional. Like, they need it to grow healthy emotionally. Okay, so the reality that you are chasing or wanting that is normal. We're biologically wired to connect with our family, with our parents. The problem is that unfortunately, if you're watching this channel, you were probably born into a family where you didn't get that. So let's talk for a minute about what happens when a child doesn't get that unconditional love. When a child doesn't get that unconditional love, their life to that child, their life is in jeopardy. Because the thought process of a child is, if my caregiver doesn't love me, they won't take care of me, something bad can happen to me. I could die. So it's almost a life and death situation that creates in a child. Okay? So when that happens, the child goes into survival mode. And in survival mode, the coping skill that the brain adopts to help the child deal with that fear of not having their caregiver take care of them. So to cope with that survival getting kicked on, the brain starts getting the child to focus on, I'll call it the magic formula to make the parent happy. Okay, that child is trying to gain their parents' unconditional love and acceptance because not only do they deserve it, but because survival's on the line, they're thinking, I need that love and acceptance. Otherwise, it can feel like death. I feel like I'm going to die, right? So the child gets so busy doing, pleasing, changing, shape-shifting, doing whatever they need to do to try to please that parent. And the brain is doing this as a coping skill for a couple of reasons. One, to try to ensure your survival, right? If you make that parent happy. But two, because if the child is so focused on what they need to do, they don't have to focus on what they're feeling. You don't have to feel the abandonment. You don't have to feel the rejection. You don't have to feel the pain of what's going on because you're so busy doing. Okay, so that's why your brain has you doing that. So fast forward and you're in adulthood and living like that in survival mode and in those coping skills that kept you safe in childhood. Well, your brain, just because you grew up, right, doesn't mean that now your brain is going to rewire to have different neural pathways, different thoughts, different coping skills, different emotional states, different beliefs. No, it's going to stay with those beliefs, those thought patterns that were hardwired in childhood. Okay, we grow up physically and we change our clothes. We outgrow our clothes, we buy new clothes. But our emotional hardware, so to speak, our belief system, our subconscious programming, that stays the way it was created or formed, I should say, in childhood until we start rewiring it. Okay, so you grow up, you're still in those thought processes, which means you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old and still chasing mom and dad's approval without realizing you're in the same cycle as childhood. That's what happens. And the sad part is the narcissistic parent is totally happy with those dynamics. You know, they're happy. This is what they want. Because by you chasing them, you're not living your life. And they want you to revolve around them. So you're stuck in this cycle. Okay? Thankfully, because of the internet, so many adult scapegoats, adult children of narcissists get to stumble on information that starts bringing them out of that unconscious pattern. Or those unconscious patterns, I should say. Right? They were doing them without realizing it. Now suddenly they're like, oh my goodness, this is what's happening. I'm chasing. Every time I chase, the other party runs. When I stop chasing, they chase me. And all of a sudden the whole pattern becomes clear, logically. And yet, even though they know in a logical sense, they still have a hard time following through and breaking the cycle. And the reasons for that is the fact that because they were coping skills in childhood, because your survival brain kicked on and began making decisions without your conscious consent, then when you start to operate outside of those beliefs, or you start to operate outside of the cycles and patterns that you've been repeating for a long time, you wind up experiencing emotional flashbacks, which means a tremendous, intense amount of shame comes over you. You start to feel like you're a bad child for actually caring about your needs. You feel like a bad person for putting boundaries down. Again, these are all the patterns that your parent instilled in you in childhood to stop you from developing your authenticity and independence. Okay, so here you are in adulthood and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm chasing love and approval from somebody that's, never giving it to me. I'm done. And all this stuff starts coming up in your body. And Joe Dispenza talks about how what comes up in our body, that's what's in our subconscious mind. So on a logical, conscious level, I might say, I'm done chasing, but I'll get an emotion in my body that shows in my subconscious mind says, I have to chase, otherwise something bad will happen. So I hope that's making it clear as to how our own subconscious can get in the way of the healing journey, okay? And the way you stop the craving, there's a couple of ways that are helpful, okay? One of them is the fact that you have to recognize that healing isn't just about walking away and stopping the chase, but it's also about rewiring your subconscious. It's weeding out those beliefs that are causing you to keep going back. Okay, that's something that has to get done on the healing journey. It's also about giving yourself what you should have gotten in childhood. So for example, this month in the Thriver School of Transformation, we're talking about reparenting. And reparenting is how we break the cycle or the patterns that we were stuck in. Okay? Because we don't even have to be living with or near the toxic parent. If the belief system and the patterns are ingrained well enough, we will carry them out with ourselves until we break out of those patterns. And reparenting is a great way to be able to do that. So there's a reparenting that needs to take place in order to break it. And part of that reparenting is learning to give yourself what you needed. So in childhood, you deserve to be seen, heard, and cared about. You deserve to be consoled when you were sad. You deserve to have your feelings matter. You deserve to have somebody have your back, to encourage you when you were down, to love and accept you with all of your imperfections, and to believe in you. Well, everything that parent didn't give you, this is the hard part, okay? Because there comes a point where we almost have to recognize and accept. So there's like an acceptance piece of being able to break that pattern. And then there's a mourning period where you have to mourn the reality that you'll never be able to get it from that toxic parent. Or at least there's a good possibility that you probably won't be able to get it from that toxic parent. So there's that mourning period that you have to be willing to go through, and then you have to learn how to give it to yourself, which means seeing, hearing, and caring about you the way you do others. Because I'm sure if you're watching this video and you're still with me at this point, I am sure you care so much about other people. I am sure that you care so much about the feelings of other people, but you're probably so disconnected from yourself or last on your own list of priorities. So in order to stop craving love and acceptance from our parents, think about it. If we're going to stop and accept that we're not going to get the love and acceptance from our parents, we have to get it from something. Otherwise, we'll have a craving that is rightful in our body, like we deserve unconditional love. Let's kind of compare that craving to food cravings, right? If I have a food craving and somebody's not feeding me, I can stare at the fact that they're not feeding me. I could try to chase them down and get them to feed me, but they're always running from me. And then there comes a point where I can accept it and be like, okay, well, they're not going to feed me. Oh, well, I accept it. That's good. But if I don't then feed myself, the craving for food is not going to go away. And it's the same thing with our unconditional love. We can develop unconditional love and acceptance of self. And when we do, we are then generating from within what we wished somebody else had given us, and that helps curb the chase. Because you don't need to chase somebody to give you food when you have just eaten and you are well satisfied. And it's the same thing with unconditional love. So I know I'm just saying this in a video, and I truly believe that these tips help. However, I also recognize that these are tips that you don't just start doing one day and the next day it's resolved. They do take time because you're uprooting limiting, disempowering beliefs. You're rewiring your brain. You're breaking patterns that have been ingrained for a long time, and you're learning new behaviors. And that takes time. So as you're learning the process, make sure to be compassionate and patient with yourself. And if you do need any extra help on the journey, make sure you check out the description box, because I always have different resources available for anyone that's on this healing journey.